Okay, hi everybody. This is Simply SCAdian, no title required. This is Zoph. Just Zoph. There's no Lucas. He's a poopy head once again and has abandoned me to live his normal life. He's a teacher, and it is parent-teacher conference night tonight. But I can do this on my own because I used to for a living. So I have a really awesome special guest tonight joining me. Brinna Chandler.
Brinna.
Brinna Chandler is in horticulture and agricultural marketing and spends a good portion of her free time on her fiber and feather farm, as well as portraying Verena Entenwirth in the SCA, where she has been playing since October of 1990, which we're going to talk about. Verena is a 14th century German tavern owner running the Drunken Duck Tavern in Swabia, Augsburg in the year 1349. Having lived in 3 different kingdoms, 10 years in the West Kingdom, Principality of Sinaga, 5 years in Calontir, Barony of Three Rivers, and 15-ish years in the Middle Kingdom within various regions, including Midlands, North Oaken, South Oaken, and Constellation. She founded the Mid-Realm Brewers in 2012, which received the Purple Freddy in 2019. We'll have to go back to that. And the Drunken Duck Tavern in 2016, which received the Grove in 2021. We'll go back to that one too. The Drunken Duck Tavern was set up to allow historical-based home brewers across the known world a chance to share their wonderful medieval creations. With site and event limitations, sometimes it's hard for home brewers to get recognized or events to get people to try their brews. From non-alcoholic drinks at dry sites to harder meads, ciders, ales, and cordials, everything served out of the Drunken Duck is 100% donated homebrew based on historical drinks that would have been consumed during the Middle Ages. For the past 10 years, she has actively been a member of the Middle Kingdom's Chatelaine Department and is the current regional chatelaine for South Oaken. Wow. Welcome, Verena.
Hello.
So how did you find the SCA?
So I actually started from Renaissance fairs. I started when I was a kid. My stepfather wanted to do fencing. He did fencing in college, and he wanted to get into fencing. And I grew up in Carson City, Nevada, which is very tiny. And the only people who did fencing was the local Renaissance fair group. And so we started with them when I was about 10. And the interesting thing for anyone who's been around that long, this was back when the West Kingdom used to not always allow fencing. So way back when, the West Kingdom had a rule that depending on whoever was on the throne, they would determine if there was fencing or not. So this particular group that I played with, when fencing was allowed, they went ahead and they fought with the SCA. When fencing was not allowed, they would then go and do the Renaissance Fair circuit. So I did that for a good 5 years, playing a little bit on the edge and stuff like that, until fencing was finally allowed full on in the West Kingdom. And then I switched completely from the Renaissance fairs over to just doing the SCA. So I've been doing it for 30 plus years. Just don't do the math. Oh, hold on. I think I lost audio for a second. Oh, shoot. Hold on, sorry, technical difficulty. Okay, yeah, I can't hear. And you can hear me, right? Oh, shoot, but I can't hear you. Is there, okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna jump right over to chat. I've never had this happen before. All right, I'm going to jump back out, come right back in. Okay, I get audio on everything but from you. That's so weird. Oh, you're muted.
Oh my gosh.
Yay!
That is hilarious. So that whole head and I was babbling.
Oh my God, people, I am so sorry. I hit, so I have this and I hit it. Oh my gosh. And here I am, like, I'm so glad I did this for a living for all those.
Okay, so funny story. Zoph and I have known each other for, I don't know, for quite a while.
Forever.
And so, like, if this was going to happen on anyone, of course it was going to happen on the one that we are together.
That is so funny. And I was like, things kind of sound weird to me, but I'm just going to keep talking. All right. So y'all missed my pitch on joining Simply Scadian. We need people to come in as guests. So I said that while we waited for Verena to log off and log back on. Verena, in
Yes.
the SCA, do you still do any martial arts?
You know what? Weirdly, I do. I am an authorized combat archer.
Yay.
And yeah, I love fighting. I love getting in there. And I'm one of those few people in the Middle Kingdom, you're allowed to have a knight sign off. So you don't have to go back and do the sword and board authorizations. And I'm one of those. And I've fought 3 or 4 wars before we went down into lockdown. In fact, I really needed to go to Gulf Wars to keep my authorization up. And then, of course, we went into lockdown. Coming out of it, with the help of some really good friends, I decided to completely redo my kit. And I'm going for my regular authorization. I'll always be a combat archer. That's always going to be my main thing. But I kind of want to learn sword and board and spear and a few other things like that in order to have fun with it. And I used to, actually, my AOA is for being a fencing marshal. But I don't do as much, which a lot of people in the Middle Kingdom don't know. But it's not something I do very often, though I like to support the fencing community if I can.
So my AOA is for being an MOL of fencers. Out in the East Kingdom, I learned how to be a minister of the list, which is an official office in the East Kingdom. I learned how to run tourneys of all types from the fencers, so they have a very special place in my heart, and they always will.
Yeah, my SCA brother back in the West Kingdom is a master of defense. I've got a couple of friends back there that were some of the first ones made. Those people that I grew up with, I mean, they could tell you horror stories of what I was like at 16. It was probably not pleasant, but they will always have a place in my heart.
I want to go back to the Ren Fair days. Do you still go to Ren Fairs at all? Do you still play in that world?
I have friends that do a lot. They'll merchant and stuff like that in the Renaissance fairs. I go as a participant, and I don't wear garb. Part of it is because I do the 14th century, and so it's the cotehardise. So walking around in the Renaissance fairs and the cotehardise doesn't work as well. But I do like to go, and I like to visit it just as a participant. But I don't do anything on the Renaissance fair circuit anymore.
What led you to join the SCA full time? What was it about the SCA And I've enjoyed both Ren Fairs and SCA. So what is it that got you?
Um, Part of it was when I was living in the West Kingdom, I loved the concept of the dream. We always love like the fantasy things. I enjoy dressing up. I actually have a degree in costume design and construction. That's how I was able to pay for college. I don't use it except for in the SCA. So I love that fantasy element. I loved when you would go back in the 90s and the 2000s and in the West Kingdom, you'd go camping and they would always have the torchlight tournaments. Everyone would camp because a lot of people would have to travel from such a distance. And we weren't hoteling back there, and just all the torches lit up in the pavilions, and it created such a love in my heart. And because I started, excuse me, so young, it became a part of my life. I moved out to Middle Kingdom for the first time back in 1999 to the barony of I'm in Flaming Griffin now, so it would have been barony of Phoenix, so that would have been in Cincinnati. And back then, they didn't want to have anything to do with college students. So we tried playing, and they didn't want us. So me and Warder, actually, I think she's an MOD now, Bridget, who now lives in Antier, but used to be in the Middle Kingdom. We had a household together for a short time period back in the early 2000s, and we went to Gulf Wars together and stuff like that. And I ended up moving back home because my stepfather passed away. And so I was helping with my mom and a few other things like that. And the fencing community that I grew up with, they really were there for me, and they became a second family during all that time period. And so when I finally left the West Kingdom to go back to school, and that would have been to go to Calontier, I put out a thing that said, hey, I'm going to St. Louis. Does anyone have, anywhere that I can like rent a room from or anything like that? And that's how I ended up with the Barony of Three Rivers. And it's just like every time I've moved, it's almost been from one SCA community to another. So it's just been a little hops and jumps and things, but it's because the SCA was a family to me. And now I have a very large extended family.
Yeah, no, it seems like that's the perk to being in the
Yeah.
SCA is when I moved from Cleveland out to the East Coast, to the East Kingdom, I immediately just moved right into an SCA community, which is such an awesome part about this. Why did you choose the 14th century?
So really, I actually chose German first. And I went and I had a Lance Connect persona for quite a while. And I have to blame Duke Stephen and a lot of the guys back when they were out in the West Kingdom, because honestly, it was all the really hot fighters that would wear leather pants. And so when I was 25, 26, I was like, I loved these leather outfits. And that's actually how I got into leather work, is from first starting to make leather Lance Connects. And even when I was here, first moved into the Middle Kingdom, I was doing Lance Connect. And it was funny when I moved over here, all of a sudden I started seeing the 14th century dresses, and I was like, I'd never really been around that so much. That wasn't as strong in the West Kingdom, and definitely not as strong in Calontier. And I was like, I want to wear one of those. And so I made my first coat hardie, and then I went on changing personas. And I chose the year I did because that was when the Black Death hit Germany. And so a lot of cool things happened during that time. It was actually the Holy Roman Empire during that time. But I've always loved the coat hardies. And so I don't know. So the 14th century just made a nice place for me to land.
That's awesome. So when you talked about leather work and Lance Connect, did women wear leather as well as the men?
There's some documentation, and there's going to be other people who are going to be far better about this than I am, that there was leather work on some of the outfits. I actually have a mint green and brown leather Lance Connect outfit. The entire bodice, the sleeves, everything is all leather. And then I did
Wow.
a linen skirt. But I would also wear boys garb when I did the Lance Connect. And even now in the 14th century, every once in a while, quite often actually, I'll wear the 14th century guys' clothes. They're a little bit easier to run around in at Penzic, and it's hard to keep me to stay standing. I have a tendency to always be moving. So the only time I'm really wearing the 14th century dresses is if I'm watching a tournament or if I'm behind the tavern.
All right, so next question. You mentioned leather work is something that you've done, but what I know that you're really passionate about right now is booze.
There's just no other way to say that. Yeah, I'm a brewer. And I like to support other brewers. And so, yeah, that if I had to narrow down my number one arts and science, it would probably be that. I love leather work. I love costuming. I love fiber arts. But yeah, it's all about the booze, baby.
What got you into, how did you first start exploring brewing in the SCA?
I'm going to have to blame Master David von Friedrich. I think I messed up his last name, from Callantyre for this one. I am actually shy, and a lot of people, yeah, I can see you rolling your eyes from here.
What?
I'm shy, and I get anxious around new people, and I don't like being around a lot of people that I don't know. And Barony at Three Rivers, when I was in Callantyre, they're big partiers. They really are. They throw a big party every year at Lily's. And the guy I was dating at that time was an extrovert, and he loved being around and partying and everything like that. And I was not. So I would hide behind the bar. And Joseph and David and these other guys that were all very much introvert brewers of the Barony Three Rivers were like, okay, you can be behind the bar with us. And I first started to contribute with cordials. That was the very first thing I ever made. And I made a pomegranate cordial, and it was tasty. And then after a while, I moved from there to meads and then to beer. And there's nothing I haven't made at this point. But it's kind of just been a thing that's kind of grown, and I love doing it. And I love supporting other artists who do it. And I love teaching it, and I like drinking it. I'm gonna be honest, I do. And it's just, I love researching it too. And that would have, a really cool thing is that would have been something that a 14th century German female, a middle class, would have done, is own her own tavern and stuff like that. It wasn't until the end of the 14th century, going into the 15th century or later, that it really became a man's job. And so it was actually historically accurate for me to be able to do that.
So, we've talked about this quite a bit because I have a dream one year, probably not when I'm renting, to make wine. I don't think it would be smart to do when I'm renting an apartment. Tell me about the making of cordials. How are cordials made?
I'm glad you actually stuck on that, because like I said earlier, I know Zoph well enough that I know that she's passionate about some things, and she also knows that I'm passionate about some things. So cordials, in my opinion, are brewing, because they're a gateway brewing. There's a huge debate in the brewing community whether or not cordials and liqueurs are like, that's not real brewing. If you don't like,
Is it because
ferment
there's
and
no
other things,
yeast? Yeah, okay, that's what I was going to say, because
there's
there's
no
no
yeast involved.
fermentation.
And I disagree. I consider it brewing because, or those who do it are brewers, because it's still an alcohol. It's still a beverage. And I believe that anyone who does historical beverages, if they want to call themselves a brewer, they can. I don't care if you're making secondment. I don't care if you're making the non-alcoholics. If you think that you are making historical beverage and you're a brewer, then you, gosh darn it, are a brewer. There's my soapbox, one of the many. But to go back to your question, cordials are so super simple. I'm actually drinking one right now. I'm doing a mulled wine cordial, which I live alone, and so I can never finish a bottle of wine. It's just not possible before it starts to go bad. So in the winter months, what I do is when it starts to go 2-3 days in, it's not as fresh as it needs to be, I dump a whole bunch of sugar in there. I dump some of my favorite spices, and I've put in a fortified alcohol. Tonight it's bourbon. And I put it in my nice little bottle of wine, and I let it just sit for a little bit. And then when I want a glass of mulled wine, I take a little bit of that, just a little bit. I heat that up till it's nice and hot, which does kill the alcohol. And then I add a little bit of the stuff from the regular bottle in, and that cools it down enough to drink, and it adds some of the alcohol back in. And it's basically the exact period rendition of a warm mulled wine that they would have drank, period. So when a cordial or a liqueur it's just basically a fortified something. It could be a base liquor of whiskey, gin, vodka, any of those base, anything that has a higher than, say, 50%. You don't want to do just a wine. It doesn't have a high enough ABV. That's only about 12 or so. You want something higher, something that when you add sugar and you're flavoring, yeast and molds won't grow into, and that basically creates a cordial. And they're easy and they're fun to drink, and anyone can do it. And the more you do it, the more you want to do it more. And then after you do it more, you go, well, what else can I do? And I believe it's the gateway into brewing. So everyone out there, try making a cordial.
So there's no fermentation involved. When you add the booze, the sugar, and the cranberry, let's just say, it's going to that would be good, right? With some cinnamon and a little bit of orange in there. All right. Cranberry cordial by Zove coming to you next fall.
I do that after Thanksgiving. If you have leftover cranberry sauce, I just literally take it and I throw it in a jar with vodka and mix it up a little bit, and then throw in a little bit of cinnamon, ginger, a couple of raisins, just shake it up. Yeah. It's a good
So,
cordial.
right, okay, but how do you keep it from going bad?
So here's the cool little fun fact about yeasts and molds and other stuff like that, is they actually don't like alcohol. So like once there's so much alcohol in a beverage, that will kill the yeast. So that's how you're able to do sanitizer with a high alcohol or something like that, is you're taking a pure grain alcohol, whatever proof it is, and you're wiping down things, and that's killing yeast, that's killing molds, that's killing bacteria. So the same thing happens in beers and wines and stuff like that. If you have a beer and the yeast can only eat up to, say, 7.5% alcohol, once it hits that point in your carboy or your glass jug or whatever you're brewing in, it will actually go ahead, the alcohol will kill the yeast, and it basically sanitizes itself. There's other sanitation methods in there that are important, of course, but that's kind of the way that it happens. And then, so if you have a juice, as long as you do no more than 50% juice and you add in like a vodka or something like that, then you can turn that into a cordial, and it's going to have a shelf life for a really long time. In fact, you're most likely going to drink it before it goes bad.
What's a carboy?
A carboy is those giant jugs that you brew in. They're normally 5-6 gallons, something like that. What I recommend to anyone who wants to get started is go to your favorite drinker, and ask them to drink an 18 bottle of those glass jugs of wine, which are like a liter, and start brewing in that. And that's basically the smaller version of a glass carboy.
So what should I use, a screw top? Should I use a cork? How do I seal it?
If you want to do it cheaply, you use a balloon. Poke just a couple little holes in the balloon, because if you put the cork back on it, if you're doing cordials, yes, screw top back on right away, because there's no oxygen going in. You don't have to worry about anything like that. But let's say that you want to make your own wine, and you go and you get one of those a used glass jug from your friend like myself, who might have a few 30 or 60 of them in your basement. And those are not all from me drinking, by the way. I would like to state that right now. Those are all things that have been donated to me that I disperse throughout the known world. I don't drink that much wine. Again, remember, I can't even finish a bottle in a week. So
right.
no. But you take one of those, you get your juice, your Welch's juice, or any juice that doesn't have sorbates in it. You put it in there, maybe put an extra cup of sugar just to make it a little sweeter. Throw in a few raisins for nutrients, and then you put your yeast in. Technically, you can even use bread yeast. It might not taste great, but you can do it. And then you put a balloon over and poke a few holes. What that balloon's going to do is it's going to make sure that cat hair, dust, weird particles don't fall in there. But it's also going to make sure that any of your gases, those things can escape, so you don't blow up your jug.
Right. So I've seen like the fancy, okay, so true story. My father's aunt, so my great aunt, used to tell us stories about when she was up in the Blue Ridge Mountains with her sister making stuff in the still. And so when I see people making beer, I always see the curly Q thing, tube.
Yep.
Is that instead of the balloon? Is that what
Yeah.
the tube is for? Okay.
Yeah, it's called an airlock. It's a little plastic thing that shoves right on top of it. And what that does is it does the same thing. It allows things to go, the gases to leave, so you once again don't blow things up, because you never want to blow things up. But it keeps all the flies and the gnats, because I can guarantee you gnats like the smell of fermenting anything. And so they're going to come and they're going to want to get in there, and that keeps them all out. Running a still is completely illegal in the US.
It is. My great aunt was very clear on that.
However, if you ever wanted to try some of the ones out of, historical manuscripts, I might know nothing about that, which is a fun pastime to do as well. And you cannot enter them in A&S at all. But it does create a really fabulous alcohol once you're done and you distill everything. So
wow, I mean, but that was something that was done in period, so it would be, but it's against the law. So we do not at Simply SCAdian and Verena, no, we do not support at all.
Breaking the law.
At all. Breaking the law, bad. Don't do it.
No.
Okay. So one of the things that did you want to keep going? Did you have something else?
Well, I want to mention one little thing on that.
Yeah.
The thing that it did allow me to do is it allowed me to do all sorts of cool little tests to figure out what, if you wanted to make the most historically accurate cordial or liqueur that you wanted to do, what proof alcohol would they have done after they ran it through the still? And after lots of tests and everything like that, I can guarantee you it is not 100 grain alcohol. They couldn't do it. So don't feel like you can, if you ever want to do cordials and stuff that you want to get the highest proof alcohol. You don't. In fact, it would make it less historically accurate. A regular Smirnoff
And Verena has frozen, so we're going to pause for a moment and wait for Verena to come back. Hopefully she does, or she doesn't, or we haven't completely lost her. So once again, while we wait for Verena to come back, I'm going to talk about the fact that we need guests. Let me know. Find me people to be guests on Simply SCAdian, no title required. No peers, no royal peers, no landed baron or baronesses. And here she comes. We are coming back to Verena here on Simply SCAdian. This has been an episode. So you can email us or send me a Facebook chat if you have somebody that would be a great guest. Welcome back. We're cursed tonight. We are cursed. You know what?
See?
Because we were talking about how tired we are because we both go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. Like right now, we both would be brushing our teeth and crawling into our bed in our PJs. Okay. But we've got
Yeah.
this. We can do this. So you were telling us that high proof alcohol actually is one, not period, and two is
Yep.
not good for the cordial.
Nope. Use vodka, use Smirnoff, use anything that you would normally like to drink. If you're not going to want to do a drink of it or a shot of it, do not use it in a liqueur or a cordial. It's just not tasty.
I had a boyfriend once who used to make what he called blood, and it was bourbon, and then he would put like whole cherries in it. And my favorite part was putting the cherries on ice cream.
Yes, I agree.
The best.
Those are always fun.
That was before I found out I only had one kidney, so I had to stop drinking alcohol. Now I can only have sips. And I found something and I'm really bummed out. So I discovered at at the event that shall not be named, Pretendzik, this now dear friend of mine introduced me to Captain Jack, or Captain Morgan, excuse me, has had this like pumpkin spice rum, but they don't make it anymore. So if anybody sees pumpkin spice rum, it comes in a little pumpkin shaped bottle. Really, I would like give you my firstborn. They might not agree with me, but I would give my firstborn for one of those bottles. That was the bomb. So that's what I now drink. I take a shot glass, sip it at night at the event that shall not be named, which will be Penzik next year, we hope. We'll talk.
Yeah, a weird fact about me, I'm addicted to everything pumpkin spice. And so people have a tendency to just give me pumpkin spice anything when they see it.
I,
So yeah, I got a few of those bottles.
I will not even lie to you that in June I will pull out in my freezer. I still have some pumpkin spice coffee. I will pull it out and make a cup because I love pumpkin spice. Tarek would tell us we're basic, so we'll just have to remind him that we're basic. Okay, so Verena, you are not just known for your brewing. I mean, you're hardcore known for your brewing, but you've managed to merge the two things that you're really incredible with into one thing. So you're incredible with brewing, but you're also a service junkie. Like you're also about welcoming, encouraging new people, keeping people that have been in the SCA for a long time active and excited about being in the SCA. You have this way about you of making everybody feel welcome, and your excitement and love just really shines through. So I want to talk now about the Drunken Duck Tavern, which is a combination of your service and your support of the brewing community. How did it come into being? What is it? Lay it on me.
So how it came into being is I got really tired of my fellow brewers not being recognized. Now Zoph knows nothing about that because she didn't maybe do the exact same thing when it comes to bards and musicians and stuff like that. There's so few events that we could go to that would allow brewing. We have so many events that just the Boy Scout camps or anything like that, they're dry sites. It is what it is. And it came down to quite a few arts and science competitions were happening that they were all dry sites. So as a brewer, they were like, oh, well, you can go to this person's house that's 5 doors down and we'll find you some judges, and really hope you're not one of those judges then after judging 5 things has to go ahead and drive back to the site. So I wanted to find a way to go ahead and recognize some of these people that, brew a lot and they brew really well. And so the idea actually came from me. I have to blame Verena Three Rivers. At their party at Lily's camp, they would have this really cool sign. They called it the beer tree. And on it, it was a big old just T-post, and it had the brewer's name, and then it had the alcohol that they were serving at that party that night. And the concept was that if someone came by and they knew what they liked to drink, they're like, well, I like an IPA. And they saw that an IPA was on there, they could order it that way. And it also saved the bartender's voice, because if you've ever bartended at an SCA party or anything like that, an event, you lose your voice by the end of the night. There's nothing left, because everyone walks up to the bar and they say, what do you got? And you're like, I got this. And sometimes that's a lot, hopefully, knock on wood. Or if you knew a particular brewer and you knew that they were really good for a style, you could go and you could say, oh, I see Master David has a mead on there. I'm going to go ahead and get that mead. And so I took their idea and I kind of turned it a little bit on its head. And this was about the time that we had the SCA 50. And the person who was organizing, I think it was one of the venues, contacted me and said, hey, we have this beautiful venue. We want to bring in musicians to sing on the stage like an actual tavern. Would you go ahead and run the tavern in the evening? And I said, yeah, I would love to. So knowing I wanted to do this way of bringing in the recognition and of a menu behind us, I contacted all the brewers in the kingdom, and we ended, and out of the kingdom, because we had people donating as far as someone brought homebrew from Sweden, which was really, really cool. And so if they didn't have a plaque already made, we put up all the information on the website. They could, the dimensions, we had extra plaques there, and we would change it every night. And we went through 700 gallons of homebrew. And we had people who were like, well, I want a margarita. Well, you can't have a margarita. It wasn't historically accurate. But we've got something, we've got a tequila based cordial, you know, and so we would put that over ice, which, believe it or not, is fairly similar to a margarita. We got to the point where on the last night we had nothing left. Now, granted, for that one, I think I personally had 25 carboys or 25 kegs of beer that I brew going up to it to make sure we had a lot. And then I had a couple of other core brewers who were donating 10 or 25 or 30 gallons of stuff. And it was it created such a cool atmosphere that you would walk into this wooden structure. It was an old wooden barn, and they had this wooden bar set up, and we had real SCA bards singing up on the stage, and we were serving drinks back there. And by the end of SCA 50, people were calling out drinks by specific brewers that they wanted, and it made my heart happy. And so after that, we kept on doing it at events. Whenever anyone would want us to, we would do it. And we would always put out the call to the brewers, hey guys, we're doing this event. Bring in your thing. And we always made sure that no matter what we were, even if we were doing it at a small after party or something, we had that same concept behind us of listing every brewer who donated and a listing of everything they brewed. So that way some of our brewers could get some recognition. And I know it's really easy for people to hang around their campfires and stuff like that and pull out a bottle of, you know, something of a margarita mix or something like that and drink, or an amaretto sour or something. But it's really cool when you hand over your mug to a tavern person who is ever running it, and they fill it up and you get a foaming mug of foaming mead, and you turn around and you listen to a bard singing on the thing, and you got to just sit around a table with your fellow SCAdians, and you just got to, for 5 minutes or an hour or however long someone was there, you forget what year you are, and for 1 second you actually think you're in the Middle Ages. And doing things like that takes me back to my youth in the West Kingdom. And I like creating those moments. And if I can create those moments in our tavern with the Drunken Duck, serving historically accurate alcohol at a historical event, it just, for me, that's perfection right there.
Do you put out a tip jar?
I do. We put out a tip jar, and a lot of that cost goes because people don't tip well. They really don't. So what that goes to is it goes to cover our CO2 costs, and because we run kegs a lot underneath because it's a little bit easier. We also will, whatever people donate in, but if I brew in kegs because it's easier to do. So it goes to help cover those costs. And then if there's anything left at the end, it goes into a fund. Sometimes we would put a call out beforehand, and that's worked really well. We did that for a simple day in the Middle Kingdom quite a few years ago. And we're like, okay, we're bringing the Drunken Duck. If you want to sponsor a beverage, it's $50. That's how much it costs, $50 to brew 5 gallons of anything. So we've had people would give us $50. They say, I want to make sure that there's a keg of cider there. And we're like, okay, do you want dry, sweet? How do you want it? You want it spiced? We'd get their requests. We'd make sure it was there. So we've had people sponsored that way as well. If after all of that, there's anything left over, we have a fund that goes into creating kits to inspire new brewers. And there's not a single brewer in the kingdom or anyone that I can actually reach, and that's a pretty far reach, that if they say to me, I want to brew, but I don't have enough money, I could set them up with a 1, a 2, a 5 gallon kit like that, from materials to anything. Right in the middle of COVID, we lost one of our very dear brewers who donated quite a lot. He had passed away to cancer, Malcolm Moore, and his wife contacted me after he passed away and said, first of all, I need help because half my house is covered with brewing equipment, and also Malcolm wanted you to have it. So we went down and we picked up everything. So we have enough ingredients, and it was so much that we had to take a 22-foot trailer 1.5 times, because we went down first. We didn't understand how much there was. We filled up whatever vehicle, then we had to go back with the 22-foot trailer. And so we have, like, if I have someone who gets into it and they're decided that they're a brewer and they're like, I can't afford a new keg. Oh, I've got a keg. You want an extra keg? We could do that now. We have, I think, in stock 30 kegs, 25 carboys. That's not including the smaller wine jug ones and the growlers and stuff like that. And anything to be able to get any new brewer that we can reach started. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Wow. All right, so we have 15 minutes left because both of us are going to turn into pumpkins at 9 o'clock. I wanted to talk to you because when I really met you and got to know you was at Gulf Wars. When did you start going to Gulf Wars? What is it about Gulf Wars? Wait, take a sip of your drink. I'll keep asking the question. I'll drag it out. What is it about Gulf Wars for you?
Gulf Wars was my first. I have to think about that. It was either my first or my second war. It was my first war because I was not legally able to drink yet. So I was 20 when I went to it. And so that would have been in 2000. We went down. That was my first war. I went with Bridget, and we camped by ourselves. And I remember, have never been to a war before, never went to a camping event longer than 2 days. And for anyone who hasn't been to Gulf Wars, it's magical. There's just such a condensed amount of people who have a love for portraying the Middle Ages, and you get to fight battles with a real castle behind you, and you get to use it. You get to fight through those castle doors. When you wake up in the morning, there's all the fog everywhere. It's very magical. It's cold at night, so you're wrapped up in furs and you're holding your mugs of warm cider around fires. And in that atmosphere, I forget that we're in the year 20, whatever it is. And I can actually think that we might be in the Middle Ages. And it's the one war. Pensick has amazing, wonderful things. I've been to that one. I've been to Astray. I've been to Great Western War. I've been to West Antier War. They all have wonderful little aspects about them that I adore. But when it comes to Gulf Wars, that's the one I consider my vacation. I have a tendency I volunteer, but I don't run anything. I'm not organizing anything. I get to go, I get to enjoy it. I get to go to the Green Dragon and listen to Valencia, one of my best friends, who's he plays the dulcimer. I get to listen to him play, and I get to see, all sorts of wonderful people. And I forget that I'm in the modern world. And for me, that it will always be my favorite war.
Yeah, I've been there twice, and it's just definitely on my list of ones that I have to go back to. But unfortunately, limited vacation time and working Pensick means Pensick comes first. You know how that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
All right. So what I have so wait, so you mentioned that the Drunken Duck Tavern got 2 awards, the Purple Freddy and the Grove. What are those awards for people not from the Mid-Realm?
So a small correction. So the Mid-Realm Brewers, and that is just anyone who is a brewer in the Middle Kingdom who donates their beverage. They got a Purple Freddy, which was really, really cool. And the Purple Freddy is for service. And so they were given that as a service for all the years that they've donated to parties after court or during court, or just donating to creating kind of like a historical atmosphere. And so they received that one first. And it was really cool to get a bunch of brewers to get a service award. And then the Drunken Duck, and I do have to do a shout out because I'm not the Drunken Duck. I might lead the Drunken Duck, but I have Oswin as my second in command, and I can't do anything without him. I've got Di, who is the keeper of my kegs. He keeps everything running. I've got Elsbeth, who makes all of my non-alcoholics. And then, of course, the late Malcolm donated tons. So it's a group effort by a lot of people. And we were awarded the Grove, which is an arts and science award. And so we were given an award basically once again for creating this atmosphere of serving historical medieval beverages, which is kind of cool.
That is really awesome. And I knew about those awards, but not exactly who and what those were received for, that's just incredible. So final question, even though if you know me and you know Verena, you know that at this point, because we haven't had a good chat in a long time, that we could, if we didn't have to be up at 5 a.m. tomorrow, we would probably talk till midnight. So what is it in the SCA? In the SCA, what can we do better?
This one's a little hard for me. There's a lot of things I love in the SCA. However, I have been a member of the Chatelaine department for 10 years. I was also, when they created the membership committee for the board of directors, I was one of the initial members of that. So the Chatelaine department has a very special place in my heart. And a lot of people don't understand or know that the fact that the Chatelaines department is not just about newcomers or welcoming newcomers or recruitment. It's also about keeping our current members happy and active and not losing our current members. And so it's a very, very valuable office. And and one of the reasons why it does hold such a special place in my heart is for a couple of reasons. The first is it's really cool when you get a newcomer started, because all of a sudden you see the SCA again through their eyes, which is kind of fun. So it holds it from that perspective. But also I remember what it was like moving from kingdom to kingdom or region to region. And some groups wanted you and some groups didn't. And I remember the first time I moved to the Middle Kingdom and being told as a college student, and granted, I already had my AOA at this point, I had already been in the SCA for 8 years, basically that they didn't want to have anything to do with me because I was a college student. And that was really, really hard. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen to anybody else. So I've had a very active role in the Chatelaines department. And this goes back to your question, I promise. I think the thing that we could do better is I think that we could recognize how valuable that office is, because I don't think we do. It's not a required office, and I think it should be. You hear the statement all the time, well, everyone is a chatelaine in the SCA. No, everyone is not a chatelaine in the SCA. Every single person who's a member can be an ambassador. They can be a recruiter, but they're not a chatelaine. A chatelaine is an office. These people are people who donate their time, they do reports, they have actual training. And I feel like we have a tendency to blow it off as an office. And I feel like that is a huge detriment to the society and to our groups. And I feel that if we started actually recognizing it and recognizing how important it is to not only do recruitment, but to get newcomers in and to get newcomers started on the right foot, but also to keep those people in who have been in for 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years, then I think the society would definitely be better. So that's one of my other soapboxes, is I really feel like we need to recognize and work and endorse the Chatelaines department far more than we do.
I really appreciate that because, like you, I actually am shy, which is hard to believe, but I am. In those social situations, I am the person you'll find in the kitchen or behind a bar. I don't just stand around and mingle well. I have to have a task. I have to have a job. But it's also why I could never be a chatelaine. I'm not somebody that would happily bound up to a new person and say welcome. And, I'm nice to them. And I always tell people, I save my biggest smile at SCA events for the people that wander in their crushed Panay velvet dress because they're new and they get the full on welcome smile from me. Um,
Yeah.
how can we recognize our chatelaines more? What can we do?
One of them is if you're in a group without a chatelaine, and I would say if I had to make a guess, 60% of the groups here in the Middle Kingdom don't have a chatelaine. Recognize that those are important offices and get people into those offices and not just anybody, because sometimes meeting the wrong person at your first event will totally turn you off from the SCA. So you do have to have the right person. You have to have someone who's willing to listen more than they are to talk. Someone who wants to not necessarily take everyone underneath their wing, but to ask the question, oh, you're interested in archery. Well, let me introduce you to my good friend, Oren. He's a green hood. This is what he does. He's going to show you all the ropes. Someone who has those connections, who can do that, get people into those offices. And then, help your officers is all I have to say is, make them feel important, because quite honestly, like, you respect, I hate to say it, but you respect your marshals. You do. It's an office. When those marshals are in the field, you would not cross those marshals. You wouldn't argue with those marshals. I wish we could give the same respect to our chatelaines. We don't. And if we did, I think, first of all, it'd be easier to get more people into those positions. But I think that it would kind of show everyone just how important it really is. Because honestly, if we don't get new people and we do lose the people we have, then, we're not going to have anyone to play with but ourselves. And that's just not fun. I do the SCA because of the community, because the amazing people out there. And who knows who's going to be the next amazing person who joins our society. And we need those shadowlanes to help those people out.
You gave me a thought. So, but I have to write it down and save it for later. Okay, so what can I do besides give my biggest smile, understanding that I don't really enjoy social situations and I do my darn best? What can I do at an event or at a meeting when there's a new person? What can anybody do?
What can anyone do? Well, it's a little bit, let's say you're not a shadowlane and you recognize someone that you've never seen before. I know we're going to totally go over time, but I have to tell this great story. I remember the first time I walked into the Barony of Cleflands, and I'm already a baroness at this point. I'm not in garb. I'm just in regular clothes. And I walk in and I know some people there, but I don't know all the Cleflanders. And the herald comes over to me, and wonderful personality, great individual. And he just recognized the fact that I had never been there before. And he welcomed me to the SCA. He asked me my name, asked me how I heard about it, at which point I was like, well, because I gave Verena as my name. And I was like, oh, I'm visiting friends here. I'm visiting, Sir Crispin. I've got a couple of other friends over here. And he's like, oh, so SCA people. I was like, and then I realized that he was talking to me because he thought I was a newcomer. And I was like, wow, he was phenomenal. He made me feel welcomed and stuff like that. To me, that would have been, if I had not already been in the SCA like 20 years at that point, that would have been the best welcome I'd ever had. It was just one person who recognized that they didn't recognize me. They came over, they introduced themselves, and they asked me questions to find out who best to send me to. If you're in a barony and you have a newcomer come in and you notice the person, whether it's at an event or something like that, go up, introduce yourself, ask them their name, then send them to your baronage, because your baranages are fabulous people if you don't have a shadowlane to send them to, because once you get the awe-inspiring of meeting your first baronage, you'll get hooked. If you don't have the advantage of being, in a baronage, you're in a shire or a canton or something like that, ask them why they're there. Don't feel like you have to be the one to take them under your wing. Because if someone comes to me and they say, I am really interested in illumination and calligraphy, I have the worst handwriting in the world. I will never ever be able to do scrolls or anything like that. But what I can do is like, oh, that's really cool. Here, let me introduce you to this person. You walk them on over in there and say, hey, this is a new person. This is their name. This is their first event, and they're interested in calligraphy. Would you mind spending 5 to 10 minutes to talk to them about calligraphy? And if you know any SCA people at all, the hardest part is not going to be them spending 5 to 10 minutes to talk about a subject. It's going to be talking only 5 to 10 minutes about a subject. But now all of a sudden you have a person that feels welcomed. They're now in the area that they're interested in. And I would guarantee you a bottle of your favorite pumpkin drink that they will come back again, because all of a sudden you've got them connected to the right person. Even if you're shy, it takes maybe under 5 minutes to have that conversation with a new person, and then you hand them off to the right one. Of course, if you do have a shadowlane and you know the shadowlanes in the group, always throw them to the shadowlane first. But a lot of groups don't. And so the biggest part is to just hand them off to someone who's going to get them hooked.
Awesome. All right, we are out of time. I have been talking with Verena Entenwirth, and so I'm going to say it the actual correct pronunciation, Entenwirth.
That is correct.
She is from the Mid Realm. She is a dear friend of mine, but she is somebody that I think everybody should get to know. She's into brewing. She's into leatherwork. We didn't even talk about your farm and the animals and the linen stuff you're doing, the weaving and the fiber arts and the kitty. Okay, everybody saw the kitty. We're all happy now. Um, Thank you so much for joining me. We are going to have a show in 2 weeks. I don't know who our guest is going to be, so that's on you, all my friends. Send me recommendations. We'd love to talk to people. We've hit the middle a couple times, so now it's time to spread out. Give me somebody from the East Kingdom. Give me someone from Artemisia. Let's get some shout out for Artemisia. I should hit up my new friends from Artemisia because I flew out for their crown tourney. You know, give me recommendations. You can go to our Facebook page, simply SCAdian, no title required, or if you know me, you can send me a private message. We would love to hear from you. It's important. This show to me is my passion and my joy because we want to talk about the regular folks in the SCA, not the peers, not the former royals, the regular folks, those of us who just sort of hang out and do our thing and don't really care about getting recognition for the work we do. Those are the people that really matter in the SCA, and those are the people we love to talk to. Thank you so much, Verena. It's been so wonderful spending this hour with you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a blast. And now I am definitely going to go to bed underneath my heated blankets.
Amen. All right, you've been watching Simply SCAdian, no title required.